Charles is the general manager of Zipcar's Chicago market. This market includes nearly 700 vehicles serving the car-sharing needs of tens of thousands of Zipsters in over 300 locations around the Chicagoland area. Zipcar is the world's leading car-sharing service with approximately 850,000 members and 10,000 vehicles in urban areas and college campuses throughout North America and Europe.
Thank you very much. Again, my name is Charles Stevens. I'm the general manager of Zipcar's Chicago market. And I first just wanted to say thank you to the Chamber for the invitation to come and speak with you all. This is very much a pleasure of mine to be able to speak with you because I have a personal connection to this community that dates back to when I was born in the maternity ward here at Lake Forest Hospital nearly 41 years ago at 10 pounds, 0 ounces, as my mom will confirm. Bless you, Mom. And it was on that day she decided to have no more children. I want to make it clear that this is absolutely not an advertisement for Zipcar. What I wanted to do is spend some time just talking about car sharing, what exactly it is, because it can be kind of strange and confusing. And I know it took me a while to really understand what it was and how it operated, how it's sort of fundamentally different from other modes of transportation. And in order to really tell that story, you have to kind of go back in time into history, back when Zipcar was founded back in 2000 in Cambridge, Massachusetts, by essentially a couple of entrepreneurs that identified a business opportunity out of the fact that in Cambridge, it was very, very expensive to own a car and get around. Parking was prohibitively expensive. The public transportation access was pretty good, and it was just very, very dense. And owning a car, when you take into consideration not only the lease payments, but maintenance, fuel, insurance, parking, repairs, tickets, licensing, like the list goes on. People spend $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 a year on their vehicle that sits unused 95% of the time. So there's a certain absurdity to that situation, right? And that absurdity leads a lot of times to a business opportunity. And so what they decided to do was start sharing cars amongst their community in a very manual way at first. The business was launched in Cambridge, which happened to be sort of a perfect place in a way to launch it because you had essentially the holy triumvirate of what makes for a perfect car sharing environment right there. You had a highly dense population with a lot of community residents, a lot of businesses, and a huge university presence. You had a very good access to public transportation. Say what you will about Boston's T system, it still was good enough. And you also had just scarce and very, very expensive parking. So in that situation, people start looking for alternatives. They very quickly come to understand that a lot of money's going out the door and they're not using this car that's sitting in their driveway. You advance this idea a few years and it starts to attract venture capital money, management changes. We start to take this thing pretty seriously, expand into what becomes 350 universities across the country right now. 27 major markets right now on 2 continents in North America and Europe, and 40 airports. Zipcar went public in April of 2011, I believe, and then was acquired by the Avis Budget Group. The deal closed in March of 2013. The public markets validated the idea of car sharing, and then the subsequent acquisition by a rental car company, of all things, further validated the idea that this is not really a fad or a trend, but it really is about the future of mobility. If you look at broader trends as well, which the first one is not as relevant to Lake Forest, But there's essentially been a reurbanization of America in a lot of areas, even outside of North America, as due to various different macroeconomic conditions, people are moving back into cities or are forced to stay in cities due to real estate prices and what have you, and they are looking for alternatives. They're looking to save money, maybe get rid of their car, rent out their parking spot and make some money off of that, and get rid of that car that, like I said, they only use to go get groceries once a week or go to a tennis lesson. So now what we have is the marketplace that we've described right now, where Zipcar is essentially all over the place with 10,000 vehicles on those two continents. There are competitors that have emerged, direct competitors that have replicated the model exactly. There are peripheral modes as well that are complementary in some ways and competitive in some ways, like taxi apps and things like that, like Uber and Halo and Lyft. You also have build out of public transportation that is highly complementary to car sharing. So as that expands, that actually helps lift the tide for car sharing. And you have an environment now where car sharing is completely legitimate. And ownership of a car nowadays is becoming less and less the aspiration of people and more something to be avoided. I remember when I first started at Zipcar about 2.5 years ago, I heard our CEO at the time, Scott Griffith, talked about how 20 years ago, the top 10 brands, the top 10 most admired brands amongst young people in this country, 3 of which were major auto manufacturers. You advance that to today, 0 of them are auto manufacturers, and they're Amazon, Facebook, Apple. A car is now something, it's an inconvenience, it's something to be avoided. It takes away from your ability to move out of your parents' basement. It takes away from your ability to move into a dense urban environment where the jobs are for a lot of young people. And it takes away from your ability to buy a new iPhone, frankly, which is something that people would rather own, sadly, in a lot of ways. But I myself I was a little bit behind the curve. I lived in San Francisco for about 6 years, 3 of which was without a car, and it was a real pain to get around. It was a real pain taking Muni and BART all around the Bay Area. And Zipcar didn't exist there. When I went to school in Evanston, it didn't exist we just launched those cars a few weeks ago at Northwestern's campus. So until I worked at Zipcar, I had never been a member. And we do own a car, my family does, with a couple of car seats basically welded into the back seat of the car to carry around our kids. But there's no way we're ever going to buy a second car. No way. Whereas in times past, we absolutely would have. We would have had to. There's serious expense associated with that, and there's also the sustainability component. For every Zipcar that exists that we launch, there are 15 to 20 personally owned vehicles that are taken off the road. And there are lots of not only congestion and livability benefits to that, but also some very real sort of no BS sustainability components to that as well. It's easier to get around. You don't have cars taking up space in cities that otherwise would be. You don't have obviously the carbon emissions that come along with it. But also the primary benefit is that when people start adopting car sharing, it's as much of a membership organization as it is a lifestyle. You're basically adopting a new lifestyle once you decide to get rid of your car and share it with other people. And once you adopt that lifestyle, what starts happening is you tend to you walk 40% more. You use public transportation twice as much. You drive 40% less. So a lot of the sustainability components are not necessarily that our fleet is more hybrid than your average car. It's just in the fact that people simply drive less. And that is a major benefit not only to people's pocketbooks and their ability to do other things with their lives, but to the sustainability of urban environments and other environments beyond that. Like I said, car sharing works best in dense urban environments. And I'm standing here in Lake Forest talking about car sharing and how great it is. So it makes sense to talk about what are we doing here, right? And I've gotten that question a lot. So Zipcar Chicago launched in 2006 with, I'm guessing, about 60 cars. Chicago's got 2.7 million people in it today, and about 600, between 600 and 700 Zipcars right now, and then other sharing alternatives as well. So there's a lot of inventory and availability of shared vehicles in the city. But there are 10 million people in the 6-county region, including Lake County, Indiana. Is there opportunity out there? Probably. Is it going to be very, very different than car sharing in a dense urban environment? Absolutely. But as I thought about it, I remember when I first started with Zipcar, like I said, in 2.5 years ago, on February 15th of 2012, shortly thereafter, I got a call from a local municipality around here saying, hey, we'd love to have Zipcars downtown. And I'm like, I'm sorry, we don't do suburbs at this point. This is really just for the dense urban environments. And I said, thanks very much. Maybe we could talk in a year. And as I got more experience with this business, I started to notice that while, yes, we will always, the core and the heart of our business will always be in that dense urban environment where you have great access to public transportation and the parking is absurdly expensive. But if we could have 2 cars work in San Carlos, California by the Caltrain station in Silicon Valley, could we maybe have 2 cars work in Lake Forest? If we have 2 cars at Dartmouth College in the middle of the woods in Hanover, New Hampshire, could we make 2 cars work in Highland Park? If we have a couple cars that are in White Plains, New York, could we have a couple cars that would work in Northbrook? And I think we can. And I think there's opportunity there. And what we noticed looking at our Chicago market is that a lot of people using our cars in Chicago actually had suburban billing addresses. We also, as everybody knows in the chamber, there are a lot of major employers in this area. So you have, the North Shore is a major employment center. You have 2 metro lines that run right through the middle of it. And as we talked to Metro about this, they were on board with the concept as well because it's a complementary service to what they provide. Additionally, we launched Zipcar Milwaukee in, I think it was 2013. And so there's logic to connect Chicago to Milwaukee by a series of Zipcars going up the North Shore. And then also, you have this sort of intangible, are people even gonna get it? You know, and that's one of these things that I think for people who are in those urban environments where they're like, I can't afford a car, I like to ride my skateboard to work, or I ride my bike to work every day, like I'm already used to the alternatives. Are people in the suburbs who are used to owning their cars and wedded to their cars, as we were saying earlier today, are they even gonna get it or consider it? So all these things are to be determined, absolutely. But I think that expansion of shared cars into less dense environments makes sense. Will it be as big as Chicago? Probably not. Probably not at all. But I think there's an opportunity there to give more alternatives to people in certain situations. It's not for everybody. Let me emphasize that. It's not for everybody. It's for when you need a car for a few hours or a few days at a time to go do a deposition or to go take clients out to look at houses or to go visit other kinds of clients or do sales calls or something like that, and then bring it back and you're done with it. It's for that poor person who has to fight the morning commute like I did this morning, coming up from Chicago. I left a message from my mom this morning. I said, before 7 a.m., I said, I think I'll be there in 45 minutes. Let's have breakfast. An hour and a half later, after I stopped at Old Orchard to go to the bathroom, I finally arrive, and we're like, now we gotta hurry, right? To the poor sap who has to do that every single day and cannot possibly imagine, oh my God, I have to go up there just for this one meeting. Do I really have to fight? No, take the Metro, grab a Zipcar, go to your meeting, come back, take the Metro back, right? That will happen over time. Right now, I will be honest with you, this is an exploratory mission that we are engaged in The cars that are up on the North Shore, we have deployed in, I don't know how many we're at right now. It's over 10 different suburbs. We're in Waukegan, we're in Northbrook, we're in Deerfield, we're in Lake Forest, we're in Highland Park. We launched Glencoe yet? We're about to, right? Yeah. So we're in a lot of different suburbs. They are all slowly ramping. There's a big difference between launching 2 cars right next to Market Square and launching a couple cars on the State and Randolph. Huge, huge differences, right? But like I said before, over time, I'm confident that the business people in the community will say, you know what? We have this car that we own as part of our butcher shop or our baker shop, whatever it is. We're getting rid of that. Or, you know what? It's so much easier to bill clients just by sending them the Zipcar invoice or just adding it to my monthly invoice to them, that kind of thing. Just use it for a few hours and then I'm done with it. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to pay for any parking. It'll take people walking by those cars with the signs that are this low 100 times before they even go to the website. But I know, I have a feeling that in the long term, it will continue to be a legitimate option for enough use cases so that we will just, in Lake Forest, in Highland Park, in Deerfield, in Northbrook, up and down the North Shore and potentially into other suburbs as well, we will just be like those 2 cars in San Carlos, California, and in White Plains, New York, and at Dartmouth College. I think it'll be there, but I need your support in understanding what the heck this is, that it's a legitimate opportunity, and to consider car sharing. Again, this is not an advertisement for Zipcar, but it is an alternative, whether it's Zipcar or some other mode, for if you are to go downtown and you would rather take the train and then you need to get to the courthouse somehow, right? There are other alternatives, and it really, really makes sense. I could talk for hours about this, but
National membership or membership for a certain vicinity?
Oh, you buy a global membership. Yeah.
One fee, you can travel and get a Zipcar.
Exactly. So what you do is you join. There's a one-time application fee because we have to run your driving record. And then when all that checks out, we send you this thing called a zip card in the mail, which is there's no magnetic strip on it, but there's a very, very light piece of RFID technology in here. I mean, super light, that you use to access the cars. We send you this, and once you activate your membership, you can make a reservation as easily on a car downtown Lake Forest as you can in the West End of London, right? All online, or actually 60% of our reservations are made via smartphone. So you could do it literally just as easily on the other side of the planet as you could, or in Midtown Manhattan, or on a college campus as you could in the cars in Lake Forest, and it gives you access to all of them. Historically, at our very beginning, we were 21 and over, which is fundamentally different from rental car, which is typically 25 and over. We actually go down to 18 years old if you are associated with a university. So we call it 18 plus. As you can imagine, the insurance costs for insuring 18, 19, and 20-year-olds is substantially different, but it's a risk that we take. We've done it 350 different times on 350 different college campuses across the country. It's a great way to enter new markets. So yeah, we've had great success with 18, 19, and 20-year-olds reserving Zipcars. Yes?
What the break-even point would be, like if you use a Zipcar 4 times a week, it'd be cheaper to own a car, or like how often you need to use a Zipcar for it to be more expensive than owning it?
Yeah, it's different for everybody. It depends on the kind of car you own. So it kind of comes down to monthly cash burn, but and that's really your own personal economics as far as what you're willing to spend. But we have members that are spending $400 or $500 a month, and they realize that they could be owning their own car, but they just don't want to, right? They just don't want to have that hassle, and frankly, they find our service to be much more convenient than owning a car ever was. We clean the cars once a week in the middle of the night. We have a team of guys that goes out in all sorts of rotten weather and cleans the cars inside and out. We do all the maintenance on them. If there's a dead battery, if there's a flat tire, we have a team of fleet techs riding on bikes 7 days a week that goes out and takes care of it lickety-split. Like, it works. It works really, really well, and there's a lot of value there. So everybody's got their different sort of break-even level. But I will tell you, people are primarily coming to Zipcar to reduce cost in their life, get hassle out of their life, get complexity out of their life, and also feel very, very good that the lifestyle that they're adopting is substantially more sustainable than it was before. So in our densest areas, you will find people, 3, 4, 5 different people using the same car in the same day. Yeah. You'll have short reservations like that. Our weekdays are actually our lowest point, our lowest utilization. Our weekends are our spikes, and we price differently as a result. We have special, that's why our prices during the week are lower. And for businesses, our prices are substantially lower than our rack rates, just an FYI. So we'll have that, but we will also have some cars that'll sit for several days unused. So it really sort of depends, but over the course of the life of your average Zipcar, you'll have anywhere from 50 to 100 people using that car. And now that we're owned by the Avis Budget Group, we're swapping out the cars a lot faster. Our fleet is a lot younger. There are a lot of interesting dynamics around that, but you can take the car for up to 7 days, but that gets really expensive. People still do. The way it works is you have to bring the car back to where you originally reserved it. It is not a point-to-point solution. That's a very important distinction. And while you're using the car, you obviously have to pay for your own parking wherever you go. About late returns. So one of our 6 simple rules is you can't smoke in the car. If you got a dog in the car, it's got to be in a pet carrier. You can't leave trash in. I mean, it's like some common sense stuff. But also, you got to leave the car with at least a quarter tank of fuel, and the fuel is actually included. 180 miles is included. Everything is included in the hourly or daily rate. But you got to return the car on time. Okay. And there are late return fees associated with it. It's like $50 for every 30 minutes. That's how seriously we take it. So what you can very easily do, if the car's available, you can just extend it through your phone. You can call and say, hey, can I get another hour? But if somebody has a reservation right then, we then go into irregular operations where we have to say, all right, you're going to get fined. When are you going to be back? If you're only going to be 10 minutes late, we'll call the next member and say, the guy's going to be 10 minutes late. Are you okay with that, or do you need to be switched to another car? Because sometimes people don't have 10 minutes. Yeah, so we have 30 makes and models of vehicles. Zipcar does. The car we own the most of right now is a Mazda 3, which I think is perfectly awesome for urban mobility. The cars we have downtown right now are a Ford Escape, and then what's the other one? A Jeep Compass, and then we have a non-SUV. Or do we have 2 SUVs?
No, we have the Jeep Compass and then we have a non-SUV. I think it might be a Mazda.
Yeah, we have a 5 Series BMW at the airport right now. So we have Audi Q5s. I came in a Volkswagen Passat today. So we have the vast majority are like what we call good class cars, which are basic, our least expensive cars that include Mazda 3s and Ford Focuses and things like that. We have better class cars, which are like Ford Escapes and Honda CR-Vs. And we have our best class cars, which are some Audis, a few BMWs, some Cadillacs, and things like that. But we put them in specific places where, look, we're very much a for-profit company. We are not Zipcar.org. We put them where they are going to be utilized the most and where people are going to get the most value out of them and where we're going to make the most money out of them. And so you're not going to find them up here. We have a really, really good member services team who's seen pretty much every situation. They've heard every kind of excuse, and they can sort of tell when people are telling the truth and when they're not. And I'm a reasonable person too. Sometimes there are just misunderstandings, and sometimes cars get wet on the interior and they smell funny or what have you. So we often have to, sometimes it's just clear as day. Sometimes we have to make judgment calls, and sometimes we have to boot people out of the service, but all the time we're reasonable people. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.